Josh looked at me, that same dark, greedy look, and pulled the shirt over my head. His hands were rough and hungry, his mouth everywhere at once. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was frantic, desperate, like we both knew time was running out. We didn't hear the front door. We didn't hear the click of her heels on the hardwood floor. We didn't hear anything except the sound of each other. Until it was too late. "Josh!" My mother's voice, confused, a little amused, floated down the hallway. We froze, tangled together, breathing hard. "My name is Chili." I wasn't thinking straight. What have I done? I can't believe I did this to my mom. Will she ever forgive me? Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, do well to subscribe and hit on notifications. To all my returning subscribers, thank you for always watching my videos. When my mom remarried, I thought Josh would just be another man passing through our lives. I was already 22, out of the house most of the time, juggling college classes and 2 part-time jobs. I didn't need a father figure anymore. I barely even needed a mother. Or so I thought. Josh was different from the men my mom had dated after my real dad, Mark. He was younger, maybe in his early 40s, with an easy charm and a laugh that made people lean in closer. His business was doing well, he dressed sharp, and he treated my mom like she was something precious. At least in the beginning. At first I liked him. He was fun. He joked around with me, asked about my classes, helped me fix my old battered car without even complaining. He made me feel seen. Really seen. In a way I didn't realize I was starving for. And then one day something shifted. It was a humid summer night. The kind where the air sticks to your skin, and the house feels too small. I was curled up on the living room couch, wearing a black tank top and a pair of loose cotton shorts, flipping mindlessly through my phone. Josh was sitting across from me, a half-finished beer in his hand, pretending to watch TV. Except he wasn't watching TV. He was watching me. At first I ignored it, told myself it was innocent. Maybe he was zoning out. Maybe he was looking through me, not at me. But when I glanced up, his eyes locked onto mine, and he didn't look away. Instead he smiled. Not the warm, harmless kind of smile he usually wore around Mom. This one was different. It lingered. It felt heavier somehow, almost hungry. My heart did a strange little flip. I looked back down at my phone, pretending not to notice, pretending it was nothing. But all the air had gone thick between us. When I got up to go to my room, I could feel his eyes on the sway of my hips. It made my skin tingle in ways it shouldn't have. That night, lying in bed, I replayed that moment over and over. Was I imagining it? Was I sick for even thinking it meant something? I pulled the covers over my head like a child, trying to block it all out. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock on my door. My heart slammed against my ribs. I held my breath, frozen. Another knock. Chili. Josh's voice, low and careful, floated through the wood. "Can I come in for a second?" I should have said no. I should have told him to leave me alone. But my hand moved on its own, twisting the doorknob, letting him in. Josh stepped inside, shutting the door gently behind him. He didn't move closer, not at first. He just stood there in the faint glow from the hallway, looking at me. His eyes skimmed over my bare arms, the curve of my thighs under the thin blanket. "You okay?" he asked softly, like he cared. Like he had any right to care. I nodded, unable to find my voice. The air between us was thick enough to choke on. He sat down at the edge of my bed, close but not touching. His knee brushed mine. Just a small accidental touch that felt anything but accidental. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us needed to. There in the silence, something dark and dangerous bloomed. Josh leaned in slightly, his hand barely grazing my ankle, like he was testing how far he could go. I didn't pull away. I didn't say a word. When he finally stood up and left the room, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My whole body was trembling, not from fear but from something far worse. From wanting. I stared at the ceiling for the rest of the night, heart thudding in my ears, shame already crawling under my skin. I told myself it was just one moment, one look, one mistake. It didn't have to mean anything. But deep down I knew. I knew the second I opened that door. I had let something in that wasn't ever going to leave. The morning after Josh came into my room, I told myself it was nothing. A weird, stupid mistake. He hadn't kissed me. He hadn't touched me in any real way. It was just a moment. A heavy silence. A brush of his hand. But even as I made breakfast and pretended everything was normal, I could feel it. The weight of what hadn't happened, and what almost had. Mom was cheerful that morning, fluttering around the kitchen, talking about some party she was planning at her office. Josh sat at the table sipping his coffee, pretending to read the news on his phone. But every few minutes his eyes would flick up to me, and when they did it was like a spark jumped between us, hot and invisible. I burned under his gaze, and I hated myself for it. Days passed like that. Tiny moments stacked on top of each other like dangerous little dominoes. An accidental touch here. A glance that lasted too long there. A smile that said too much. A silence that said even more. The first real line we crossed was so stupid, so small, it almost didn't feel like anything. It was late. Mom had gone to bed early after drinking too much wine. I was on the couch in the dark, half watching some dumb movie when Josh sat down beside me. Too close. I felt the heat of him before I even turned my head. He smelled like soap and something darker, whiskey maybe. When I looked up at him, he was already staring down at me. So close I could see the tiny flecks of green in his brown eyes. "You cold?" he asked, voice low, rough. I shook my head. But still, he reached out and pulled the throw blanket over both of us, his hand lingering on my thigh longer than it needed to. I didn't move away. I didn't even breathe. The movie played on, forgotten. Josh's hand slid slowly, cautiously, up the side of my leg under the blanket. Higher. Higher. When his fingers brushed the edge of my shorts, my whole body stiffened. Not in fear, but in anticipation. I should have shoved him away. I should have screamed. I should have thought about my mom sleeping just down the hall. But I didn't. I let him touch me. I let him learn the shape of my thighs, the curve of my hips. And when his mouth found mine, hot, hungry, desperate, I kissed him back. It wasn't soft. It wasn't slow. It was messy and wild and wrong in every possible way. When he pulled away, his breathing ragged, he whispered, "Tell me to stop." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I couldn't tell him to stop, because I didn't want him to. The next night he came into my room again. And this time there were no excuses, no hesitation. Clothes hit the floor. Sheets tangled. Breathless gasps filled the darkness. He was married to my mother. He was my stepdad. None of it mattered when he was inside me, murmuring my name like a prayer. Afterward I curled against him, heart hammering so loudly I was sure the whole world could hear it. Guilt gnawed at me, but it was buried under something even bigger. Desire. We made a pact without speaking, a silent agreement to keep it secret, to pretend it never happened during the day, to pretend we were good people when the sun was up, and monsters when it went down. Night after night he crept into my room, and night after night I let him in. It became our twisted ritual, a dangerous dance on the edge of a cliff. And with every stolen kiss, every whisper, "Just one more time," we edged closer and closer to the moment everything would collapse. Because secrets that dirty don't stay buried forever. Looking back, I think a part of me always knew it couldn't last. Secrets like ours rot from the inside out. Sooner or later they burst into the light, ugly and undeniable. It happened on a night that started out like all the others. Mom had gone out to dinner with some old friends. Josh stayed home, claiming he was tired. And I knew exactly what was going to happen the second the door shut behind her. I wore a thin white nightshirt, the kind that clung to my skin and barely reached my thighs. I told myself it was just comfortable. But deep down I knew it was for him. I left my bedroom door unlocked, like an invitation. When Josh pushed it open an hour later, he didn't say a word. He just looked at me, that same dark, greedy look, and pulled the shirt over my head. His hands were rough and hungry, his mouth everywhere at once. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was frantic, desperate, like we both knew time was running out. We didn't hear the front door. We didn't hear the click of her heels on the hardwood floor. We didn't hear anything except the sound of each other. Until it was too late. "Josh!" My mother's voice, confused, a little amused, floated down the hallway. We froze, tangled together, breathing hard. "Chili? You up?" she called closer now. Panic clawed at my chest. Josh scrambled off the bed, yanking at his pants. I grabbed the sheet, pulling it up to my chin, heart pounding so hard it hurt. But it didn't matter. Mom was already pushing the door open. The look on her face when she saw us is something I will never forget. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally horror. For a long, heavy moment none of us moved. Josh half-dressed and shamefaced. Me wrapped in a crumpled sheet, tears already burning the backs of my eyes. Mom standing in the doorway, holding a takeout bag in one hand like she just wandered into some nightmare she couldn't understand. "Mom," I started, voice breaking. She didn't let me finish. The bag hit the floor with a thud, food spilling everywhere. Her hands flew to her mouth, a choked sob escaping her throat. Josh reached for her. "Emily, Don't," she gasped, backing away like he was something toxic. "Don't you dare." Her eyes shifted to me, wide, betrayed, shattered. "My daughter," she whispered. "My daughter, Josh." The sound of her voice, the way it cracked on that word, broke something inside me. Tears spilled down my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I choked out. But it was worthless. There weren't enough apologies in the world to fix what we'd done. Mom staggered back into the hallway, one hand pressed against the wall, like she needed it to stay upright. Josh started after her, but she spun on him, rage sparking through her grief. "Stay away from me," she screamed. "Stay the hell away from both of us." The door slammed so hard behind her. The pictures on my walls rattled. Josh stood there for a moment, looking at me like he didn't know what to do, like the whole world had just crumbled under his feet. And maybe it had. Without another word, he turned and left too. I sat there alone, wrapped in nothing but a sheet and my own shame, shaking so badly I thought I might throw up. The truth was out. There was no taking it back. No pretending it hadn't happened. And in that awful hollow silence, I realized something even worse than the shame. I hadn't just lost my mother. I had destroyed her. Mom didn't come home that night. I waited up for hours, sitting on the edge of my bed, still wrapped in that same sheet, like it was the only thing holding me together. But the front door stayed closed. The house stayed silent. Josh didn't come back to my room either. I didn't know where he went, and honestly I didn't care. When the sun finally rose, pale and cold, it felt like it was shining on the ruins of my life. Everything was broken. Everything was wrong. By noon I heard a key in the lock. I raced downstairs, hope flickering in my chest like a dying candle. Maybe she would forgive me. Maybe there was a way back from this. But the moment I saw her face, I knew better. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her skin was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. In her hands she held a single suitcase, the same battered one she used when she left my father years ago. "Mom," I whispered, throat tight. She set the suitcase down with a heavy thud, straightened up, looked me dead in the eye. "I'm leaving," she said simply. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't even sound angry. It just sounded empty. "Wait, what?" I stumbled forward, heart racing. You can't just leave." Her mouth twisted into a broken smile. "Watch me." I reached for her, desperate. "I'm sorry, Mom. Please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." She flinched away like I'd slapped her. "Didn't mean for it to happen?" she echoed, laughing bitterly. "You let it happen, Chili." Over and over again. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know what to do. "You could have said no," she said coldly. "You could have thought about me, about what it would do to this family." Family. The word felt like a knife between my ribs. Josh came down the stairs then, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked at Mom, then at me. No apology. No excuses. Just silence. Mom grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. She hesitated with her hand on the knob, back turned to both of us. I hope it was worth it, she said quietly. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, the last piece of the life I had known. Josh stood there for a long time. Then he dropped his bag and sat down heavily on the stairs, head in his hands. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. We had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. We had burned everything down just to touch something forbidden. And now there was nothing left but ashes. Later that night, Josh packed up the rest of his things and left without a word. No goodbye. No promises. Just silence. I stayed behind in the wreckage. Alone. Haunted by the look in my mother's eyes. Haunted by the sound of her voice breaking when she said my name. You think you can survive betrayal. Until it's your own hands holding the match. Until you realize you weren't just the victim. You were the one who set the fire. I tell myself it was love. Or loneliness. Or something broken inside both of us. But deep down I know the truth. Some sins don't come with second chances. And some mistakes you carry with you forever. Have you ever imagined yourself in this kind of situation? What did you do about it? Subscribe to this channel and hit on notifications for more interesting stories like this.